All right, for those on the tape, we had to take a short break because I got the vibes of someone having an English Bible open, and we had to discover who that was and correct them a little bit. But in any case, we'll continue on. And you guys still bringing an English Bible class, huh?
We can reference other scripture quickly in the Old Testament.
Old Testament. Well, now that you're going to buy your expensive Greek and Hebrew thing,
Yeah, you need to read it first.
well, you know. Okay, so first class conditional sentences. Assumes the reality of the process for the sake of argument. All right, page 312, second class conditional sentence. Assumption of an untruth for the sake of argument. Contrary to fact. Notice under number 2, the present contrary to fact condition uses the imperfect in both the protasis and the apodosis. And the past contrary to fact uses the aorist in both the protasis and apodosis. Examples: if this man were a prophet, imperfect, he would know who and what sort of woman this is touching him, that she is a sinner. If you believed Moses, you would have, if you believe Moses, you would believe me. All right. If they had known, those are both present. If they had known, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory. Past, aorist is used in there. Okay, that's second class conditional sentence. Third class conditional sentence. The third class condition often presents a condition as uncertain of fulfillment, but still likely. So number 2, the third class condition encompasses a broad semantic range from a logical condition or connection, if A then B, in the present time, sometimes called present general condition, indicating nothing as to the fulfillment of the protasis, and a mere hypothetical situation, or one that probably will not be fulfilled. See a more probable future occurrence. Technically, the subjunctive is used in the third class condition as well as the fifth class condition. All right, down a couple paragraphs. The fifth class condition, don't worry too much about the fifth class condition, offers a condition, the fulfillment of which is realized in the present time. Excuse me. This condition is known as the present general condition. For the most part, this condition is a simple condition. That is, the speaker gives no indication about the likelihood of its fulfillment. His presentation is neutral, if A, then B. All right, so there are some examples of this. First one, third class condition: I will give you all these things if you will fall down and worship me. He may or may not fall down and worship him, but if he does, then I'll give you these things. Here is a present general condition, the fifth class condition. If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble. All right, and then the fourth class conditional sentence. The fourth class condition indicates a possible condition in the future, usually a remote possibility, and here we have the optative mood. There is not a complete example of one of these in the New Testament, with both protasis and apodosis all together. All right, any questions on conditional sentences? Great. All right, volitional clauses, in other words, commands. All right. Page 316, the basic force of the aorist in commands, prohibitions, is that it views the action as a whole. Remember, that would be consistent with the aspect of the aorist altogether, right? While the basic force of the present in commands, prohibitions, is that it views the action as an ongoing process. So an aorist will look at something as a whole, and a present or imperfect looks at something in its process. Okay, the basic meaning may, of course, be shaped in a given context to fit, say, an ingressive idea for the aorist. Thus, if the conditions are right, the aorist prohibition may have the force of do not start, but not always, right? This is an affected meaning or specific usage, but to call this the essential idea is not correct. Okay, commands. The future indicative is used for a command. You will be holy because I am holy. And as it says, this is really affected by the Old Testament because of the jussive in the Old Testament Hebrew being similar in form to the future kind of idea, imperfect, right? So here the future is used in a command kind of way. And when we looked at the future tense, we looked at the future that was used as a command, right? Imperatival future. And here we kind of see it again in a different context. The aorist imperative. You can have an ingressive aorist, which means to start an action. That's possible. The pure ingressive, the momentary, well, two kinds of ingressives, momentary or single act, or a pure ingressive, which is the beginning of an act that's not necessarily momentary. Or you may have an aorist that is a constative aorist, and this would be to indicate a solemn or categorical command. The stress is not begin an action or continue to act, rather the stress is on the solemnity and urgency of the action. This is the use of the aorist in general precepts. All right, the present imperative can be used as a command, of course. The present imperative looks at the action from an internal viewpoint. It is used for the most part for general precepts. Attitude, behavior, that's consistent with the aspect of the present tense itself, isn't it? You can have an ingressive, progressive. The force here is begin and continue. Customary, you should therefore pray as follows, or pray as a habitual sort of thing. Iterative, something that you do again and again. So ask, seek, knock, that's in the present imperative. And then you can have prohibitions, negative commands, in other words. You can have a future indicative with who, or sometimes may. So the future, the imperatival future, but just with the negation. Now, in the Greek, if you're going to use an aorist in a negation, it's going to be an aorist subjunctive, usually, almost always. All right, and it's the same thing. If you take it as an ingressive, it may mean do not start something. Right? In a negation, if you have an imperative, it's almost always going to be a present tense imperative in the New Testament, and it could mean stop doing something if the context warrants that, or even a customary present general precept: do not forbid the speaking of tongues. All right, and here's the paragraph we've been looking for all term. In many of the New Testament letters, the force of a particular present prohibition will not always be focused on the cessation of an activity in progress. It is not, then, safe to say that when an author uses the present prohibition, the audience is being indicted for not heeding this command. Other factors, especially the overall context and Sitzimleben of the book, now that's a German word. Sitzimleben has kind of become a technical word in biblical scholarship. Anybody knows what it means?
I should, because we talked about it in other class. But
what you learn in Greek can help you in all your classes, right? Especially the overall context and Sitzimleben of the book must be taken into account. The Sitzimleben, literally the situation in life, or the historical context of the book. Even got some German in Greek. That's the paragraph we've been looking for now for 9 weeks.
Because it's the last one.
That's right.
Okay, you sure didn't miss something.
Pastor Joe probably took my books with him.
No, I made sure you took them with you. I've already had them put in your briefcase.
You did? Wow, that's really good. So who's going to get the A?
Travis.
Well, I'm about halfway between the two of them, so.
Well, I'm going to actually put them in your briefcase.
Then you get the A.
No, I had him put it in.
I would love to have an A and a class I haven't taken yet. Just remember that when I have you 2 years from now.
There you go. I'll mark that down.
If you don't, I will.
Okay, Mark chapter 15. You'll need your cheat sheet. Isn't it good to play basketball on Tuesday night?
I think it goes against some of their legalist rules.
If they were really walking with the Lord, they would play on Thursdays.
That's for sure. Mark chapter 15. Since we had to give Adam a second chance on the vocabulary quiz,
Sure, I'll read first.
his happens to be on top. So we ought to have Adam start us off, I suppose.
Here.
Okie dokie.
You know, I don't know why it is, but it seems like I've been dogging you unnecessarily for the last couple of weeks.
Oh, he deserves it.
Is
Were
your
you
life...
talking to me last week when I wasn't here?
No.
Tape was off?
No, it was the week before that I was dogging you about something. Is your life going too smooth or what?
Absolutely not.
Or maybe this is just par for the course. All right. Well,
He has ministry and angel.
we never know why we're mean to people. Sometimes there's a godly purpose in it, I suppose. All right. Well, take off, Adam, and let's see what happens.
Alrighty. And immediately, when it was morning, after having a council, the chief priests with the elders and scribes and all the Sanhedrin, after binding Jesus, they have sent him away and they have handed him to Pilate. Handed him over to Pilate.
All right. Nice. Now, you ready?
Yes.
The translation and parsing, that's now become the easy stuff.
Oh, good.
For who?
What kind of conjunction would you call chi?
At which point in there? There's three.
Oh, the first one, I mean. So you're being picky now.
Yeah. Well, I just want to make sure with.
Which answer you get wrong?
Yeah. Well, I don't know what it fits in here, but it seems like Mark just kind of starts every sentence in the book with that, which I'm not sure what kind that makes it.
Connected.
Well, it's not really connected because it doesn't really connect anything.
Well, it's also known as continuing.
Well, it does kind of connect in a sense, even if not specifically. It kind of just gives the text a flow, doesn't it?
Yeah. I'll say connected.
If you look on page 296, well, maybe better on 299. You could actually call this a transitional conjunction, I think. Although he doesn't list chi as one of those. In that case, maybe 296, the connective conjunction, probably is what it is.
It's kind of a mean question to ask.
Yeah, we're working at it. All right, let's see.
The rest of them are connective.
The rest of them, let's see. the chief priests with the elders and scribes and the whole Sanhedrin. Yeah. So elders and scribes are connected together as equals, right? So chief priests with the elders and scribes, so that kind of puts the chief priests above.
And
in
the
a sense.
Sanhedrin is the elders and scribes also.
That's right. And the whole of the Sanhedrin, well, is it? With the elders and scribes and the whole of the Sanhedrin? Probably, yeah. Now, poiesontes. What kind of word is that?
It's an aorist participle.
It's an aorist participle. What kind of participle do you think it is? This feels a lot like the final, doesn't it? Right? This is this, right?
The final?
Yeah, the final exam.
Except for with not as many people.
Yeah, well, fewer people and on paper, you know. But this feels a lot to me. This feels a lot like the
In
final.
other words, what you're saying,
Is it
Yeah.
attendant circumstance, maybe?
Maybe you could.
Or temporal?
Temporal, I think, is probably temporal. It could be causal, couldn't it? Because they had a consultation, they did this.
Seems like they kind
Like-
of already made up their mind to do it before they
Right.
had the council.
For that reason, I like the temporal probably better. But there probably is something of a causal element in there. So it's
Seems like the
probably,
meeting was just to figure out how or when or
yeah.
they already decided. Because didn't we read that last week that they began to plan how they would.
Yeah, but I think that the counsel that they took probably was a step toward that. So in that sense, there's maybe a minor element of causality, but probably the major element is temporal, I would say.
Why would it not be attendant circumstance?
Well, let's have a look at what he says about that. Where does he talk about that?
Page
279.
Because this participle, if you read through there, it actually fits, because those 5 or whatever it is, those 5 points there on 280. The participle is aorist,
well-
the main verb is aorist.
Main verbs are perfect.
Huh?
It was translated like a finite verb for one thing.
Right, exactly.
And maybe you could. Well, okay, the tense of the participle is usually aorist. The tense of the main verb is usually aorist. The mood of the main verb is usually imperative or indicative. Participle will precede the main verb. So it fits those things, doesn't it? And we're even in narrative literature, so it could be. And immediately they the Jews had a council, and I suppose it's possible. I don't lean toward it. That's an interpretive issue, I guess. Because they already, let him out and delivered him to Pilate. That's already compound. You have a couple of different participles that seem to be subordinate to that. In other words, the participial idea wouldn't be so much subordinate to the main verb. It is in structure, in grammatical structure, but in terms of the meaning of it, the participle really is indicating an action that is on the same par as the main verb. So the difference between it being a compound idea and a complex idea, right? paratactic, and hupatactic. So in terms of the meaning, you're talking about the attendant circumstance participle in terms of meaning, not grammatical structure. Grammatical structure is hupatactic, right? But in terms of meaning, it's paratactic. You see what I'm saying? You could see it that way. It's possible to see it that way, but I'm not sure I'm as comfortable with that as that. But, you know, I think you can make an argument that it is. As the narrative just kind of unfolds, they did this and they did that. So, yeah, I don't think that would necessarily be wrong. But the more I lived it, the more I might like it. Who knows?
What was the temporal? What was the definition of temporal again?
Well, it's just that the emphasis would be that they did this, they had this counsel before they let him out, before they bound him and let him out.
So it's more time.
The time emphasis, yeah. I don't know. I suppose in the sense that it may be a result. You can look at it in terms of result as well. As a result of them counseling together, they did that. So that wouldn't be bad either. So speaking of participles, what kind of word is desantes in the second line there, into the second line? Or if you're using the different
Also an aorist participle.
Yeah, so what would be the use of the participle there?
I'm going to go with temporal on that one.
Well, you could, but there might be a better one.
Well, that one also could be attendant circumstance, I think, or
I don't think so on that one.
manner. Is that one?
Manner. Now I'm liking manner. How did they take him? How did they lead him out or whatever, take him out and deliver him to Pilate? They did that with him bound,
What that means, kind of.
which is important. No, that's not the means. It's not how they conveyed him. It's the manner in which he was taken, which is important because he wasn't taken as as a dignitary. He wasn't taken as a somebody who wants to go visit. He was taken as a prisoner.
Nice.
Right?
That conveys the attitude.
So, yeah. But you can see when we get to this point, it's very much an interpretive issue, isn't it? All right. That's very good. Is there anything else in there you think we ought to ask him? All right then. Robert, why don't you tackle verse 2?
And Pilate asked him, are you the king of the Jews? And he answered him, saying, you are speaking as you were saying.
You said it.
You said it, yeah. But it's you're saying it. So.
Thou sayest. You are saying.
Thou sayest.
Thou sayest. That's great. All right. What kind of conjunction would that first chi be?
Would that be continuing?
Yeah.
Continuative?
Yeah, I think so. It would be the same as the one in verse 1, the first one in verse 1.
I think there should be a
I think it's more though, because it's a continuing story.
separate category and just have a Markle conjunction.
Marco.
It's actually,
Well, just because Kai-
Hebrew, conjunctive vav is what it is.
Huh?
It's actually the Hebrew conjunctive vav.
Well, it may be influenced by that.
Yeah.
Just because the first verse 1 starts the chapter, though, it doesn't mean there isn't a sense of the story continuing there too, because those chapters weren't there to begin with. But there is a greater disjunction in the story because it's the next day, right? So there is a difference. What kind of heiress do you think epeirotesen is? He asked him.
Gens aggressive?
Yeah, that'd be my guess too, I think.
Because he's not sure why though. Can you explain?
Well, because he starts asking him at the beginning of his
Okay.
questioning of Jesus. Yeah, so that probably makes sense. Should we ask what kind of genitive tone eudione is, or would that be too risky?
We get lost. That's over.
That's been a long time ago, hasn't it?
Wouldn't that be the one, the relationship?
Now we launch into it.
Association.
Content.
Description. Relationship? After certain verbs.
Which one means that he's head over all? King over all.
There's actually a separate category just for that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, the genitive of subordination.
See, that's what I was trying to say.
Where does he talk about that? There it is, page 54 to 55.
The genitive substantive specifies that which is subordinated to or under the dominion of the head noun. Clear examples, the king of Israel.
See, told ya. I just didn't know it was wrong. So it wasn't as hard as we thought.
All right, good.
Did I see that one?
See, that wasn't so bad, was it?
Because there's no participles in there.
I think that's almost a derivative of the genitive, of the objective genitive, however, because king is almost a noun of action, because a king rules, right? And who is he ruling? Israel. So it's almost a subcategory of that one. But it's fine to have its own category, genitive of subordination. I mean, that's the way he would, obviously, very much the way he would categorize it. Turned out to be a fairly safe one, didn't it?
Yeah.
Apokrythes. What kind of word is that?
It's here's middle
It's not middle.
or passive. It's not passive.
Yeah.
Or warm.
Well, it's probably a passive deponent. Participle, right? There is passive participle. So what kind of participle do you think that is? Look on page 282.
Paraphrastic or redundant?
Okay, you have to pick.
Let's say redundant.
I think you would be right.
So it's already assumed it.
Well, it's because he answered to him saying. And you see that all the time in narrative. He answered and said, right? That's a redundant participle. All right, very good. Next would be Stacy. Verse number 3. Can you do 3 and 4?
Okay. And the Pharisees were accusing him of many, or much, or many things.
All right, Pharisees?
Oh, the chief priests.
That's
excuse
right.
me.
Now that's interesting because that's the opposite of the English idiom. The chief priests accused him of many things. But in Greek, the accusative is the many things, and the him is in the genitive case. So the idiom is just reversed. They accused many things with reference to him, or something like that. Right? So you'd have to kind of reverse that to get a good English translation. They accused him of many things.
And Pilate again asked him, or demanded of him, saying, kind of emphatically, will you not say anything? In a sense, nothing you are saying. See how many are accusing you.
Well, how many things?
Or the pasa.
Yeah, that's neuter.
See how many things they are accusing you. That's a third plural.
Right, that's right. That's right. How many things they're accusing you of? You're not supposed to end with of. How would you do that correctly in English? See how many things of which they are accusing you. That's how.
See how many things of which they're accusing.
You could end with of, as far as I'm concerned. However.
Did you do, see how many accusations they have made against you?
And Jesus answered nothing to no one,
NIV.
so that it marvels Pilate.
All right.
Yes.
Yes. Jesus still answered nothing, so that Pilate marveled. All right. Yes, it is. All right. Well, let's talk about that. Hosta with the infinitive is what kind of infinitive is that then? Hosta with the infinitive means what? Result, exactly. So the result of Jesus not answering was that Pilate marveled. Now, what case is Pilate in?
Accusative.
That's right. So what's the use of the accusative? This looks a lot like the final, doesn't it? How's it functioning there? How's that accusative functioning? How did we translate it? So that we translate it like a finite verb in English. So that Pilate marveled. Right? Yeah, we translate it as the subject of what? What is marveled? Infinitive. Now, it's accusative. How can an accusative be a subject?
Sometimes infinitives take accusative subjects.
That's right, because the subject of an infinitive, quote unquote subject, is in the accusative. Why? Because some grammars will say that it's an accusative of reference, with the result that marveling with reference to Pilate. Right? Well, that's kind of going around the barn. So, but it is the subject. But an infinitive, in some sense, by definition, can't have a subject, right? So it is the, quote unquote subject of the infinitive, which occurs in the accusative. Which, again, if the infinitive were really going to have a subject, it would be in a nominative, wouldn't it? but for all intents and purposes. So if we can look at it structurally, how is this structured, right? We can say, well, structurally we have an infinitive and then an accusative of reference or something like that. But what does it mean? Well, it means the same thing as, Pilate being the subject of this verbal idea, right? All right, but as long as you see that that's what's happening, you have a result infinitive with Pilate as the so-called subject of the infinitive and the accusative there. All right. Okay, back to 3. What should we? What use is Kai there?
I would like it to be a connective.
Okay.
Because it seems like there's a list going on.
Yep, that's right. And just a continuation of the narrative, right? So that'd be typical. What use of the imperfect do you think you have there? That is an imperfect right there, isn't it? That's how you translated it. Katergorun. How do we know it's an imperfect? Because it's a contract verb, and the contract vowel has contracted. So it's got to be in the present system, right? If it were an aorist, what would the contract vowel have done?
Lengthen?
Lengthened, that's right, before the temporal infix sigma, or whatever the temporal infix happened to have been. Because it could have been eta or whatever, but not eta, I meant theta. Okay, so what kind of imperfect do you think that is? This really looks and feels more like the final more every minute we're into this, doesn't it?
Is this supposed to be?
We got sinking pit stomach kind of.
Well,
You
if
start
you,
saying to yourself, do I know Greek at all?
and you probably will open it up and have that feeling, and that's when you just realize, yes, I do know this, and it'll come.
Just recite the alphabet. Make yourself.
It's an open book, final. Yeah, there you
It's
go.
like it's one indicative.
Imperfect. Imperfect.
Indicative and perfect.
What do you, I don't see that one.
Is this Greek?
It has been hard to cram all of syntax into 10 weeks, I might tell you.
Route 26 in the cheat sheet.
Huh?
Route 26 in the cheat sheet is perfect.
Yeah. It's a progressive.
Well, it may well be. It may also be an ingressive imperfect, and it kind of probably is some of each. They began to, I can just imagine, they began to incessantly accuse him. You can just see them talking at once, and they get before Pilate and they start in. I mean, this really preaches, actually. They get before Pilate and they start in. And they're talking over one another, and they won't stop, and because they accuse him of many things, right? So they're going on and on and on and on and on about all this stuff.
Pilate even recognized that, and later on he says that for envy's sake that they're saying these kind of things.
That's right. And part of that's probably what influences my picture of this word, in the imperfect, right? Well, it's not aorist. They accused him, just looking at the process as a whole. It's looking at the process of the process, right? So I would say it's probably both the beginning and the durative nature of it, the progressive nature of it is probably being emphasized as well. Now, it doesn't seem like this discussion we're having, fits the meaning that's coming out of the text, as opposed to these categories not being legitimate for tenses. Right?
It's not a movie.
Let's see. Legon. See that participle in verse 3? Sorry, verse 4? What kind of use of the participle do you think that is?
Redundant.
There you go. Very nice. You see that? Oh, he just slammed that one. Boom! You get that one with both barrels right there. That's what happens when you pay attention to what other people are reading. You know? All right. Good. Okay, we're on verse 6. Joe is gone. Pastor Joe has left the building. You say that on Sunday, don't you, Cyrus?
No, sometimes I try to leave before you.
Over the PA? Don't you announce that over? Isn't it your job to announce that on the PA? Pastor Joe has left.
Only once a month.
His job is to lock the door so he can't get back in.
All right, John.
6. Okay. And now, according to the feast, he released to them one prisoner, whoever they requested.
Oh, that was so good. Do 7.
There was...
That's a beginning Greek student downstairs, by the way, that you're
I actually think it might be Joe.
And there was he, or one named Barnabas. Barabbas, yes. Who, with being chained with the prisoners who were in the rebellion, committed murders.
Yes. And notice that this is a related word, what you translated prisoners, the stasia stone, and the stase, right? So the rebels in the rebellion, or the insurrectionists in the insurrection, or something like that. Right? They're rioting, the rioters in the riot, or however you want to look at that, right? Who in the riot had committed murder. John, what tense is pepoi kaison in? Careful now. It's the very last word of verse 7.
Looks like perfect.
Nope, that's half of it.
Careful. It looks like perfect. What would perfect endings be? First of all, we have to ask ourselves, what is this from? It's from poieto. So I see the contract vowel epsilon lengthening before the kappa temporal infix. I see it happening before my eyes. I know it's not in the present system. I also see a reduplication, pep. So first thing that comes to my mind is perfect. That would be the first, like a perfect. First thing that comes to my mind. So what are my perfect endings then? Well, ka, kas, ke, kamen, kata, kasis.
The ending is aorist ending.
No, it's not aorist. It's not aorist ending because I have a reduplication. I clearly do have a reduplication. So it's not ka, kas, ke, kamen, kata, kasi. It's not my side time with the sentai. It's pluperfect. Pluperfect. They don't see too many of those. What's the key to the pluperfect? Well, first thing is you don't know what it is. Okay, so you're clueless about it. So that's the first thing you're looking for. Is pluperfect, right? Well, it looks like a perfect, only the ending has a diphthong instead of just a vowel. So instead of the alpha vowel, ka, kas, ke, kamen, kata, kasi, you have a diphthong, epsilon iota in between. Right? So here we have, instead of, you have kason. Instead of kamen, kata, kasi, or kamen, kata, kan, here you have kason. Right? So that diphthong clues you to the pluperfect. Right? Just like the diphthong in the ending, the omicron iota type of diphthong in an ending clues you to the optative. Right? So again, if you look at a form and go, clueless, what is that? Oh, if it has an oi kind of diphthong, Optative possible, right? Take a look at that. If it has an epsilon iota kind of diphthong, pluperfect. See? But that's kind of not that hard because the reduplication is going to tell you. I mean, if you truly have reduplication, it's going to be in the perfect system. And if it's not a perfect, then the only other logical possibility would be the pluperfect. So reduplication and that diphthong in the ending. Well, and you know the kappa temporal infix too, just like the perfect. That's pluperfect temporal infix as well, right? Okay, very good. What kind of sentence do you have here? Let's see. Verse 7. Compound, complex, or simple. And there was, and here we have this de, you know, connected. We'll talk about that in a minute. There was one called Barabbas with the insurrectionists having been bound, who, in the who, plural, in the insurrection committed murder. Now the who does the who refer to, by the way? Does the who refer to Barabbas?
Yes.
Huh? Okay, we better take a vote. We better decide this by a vote. We'll do it democratically. How many of you say it refers to Barabbas? How many of you say it does not refer to Barabbas? Okay, now we know what democracy would say, but what does grammar say?
Plural, isn't it?
Wouldn't it be
Yeah.
he was,
Pointiness?
Well, the relative here
Among
is
those
plural, right? The relative here is plural, and Barabbas is singular, obviously. What word do we have that's plural with the rebels or insurrectionists? That word is plural. Stasia, stone.
Well,
So-
the pluperfect is plural too, who had, those who had committed murder.
That's right, because the subject of that pluperfect verb is that relative. That's why what case is that relative in? Hoitines. Hoitines. End of the line. Verse 7, second end of the, right under the 7 actually.
Oh.
Yeah, that's masculine nominative plural, isn't it? Right? So that's the subject of the plural verb, pepoie caison, right? So that's a relative clause right there, isn't it? All right. So that sentence, verse 7, is that sentence simple, compound, or complex?
That's
33% chance.
Seems complex.
You're right. Why is it complex?
Because there's one or more things that are subordinating.
That's it. That's the key word. The relative pronoun, the relative clause is subordinate to the main clause, right? All right. Very good. Now we have at the beginning of verse 7, de. How is de being used there?
That's just a connective.
I would say it's a connective. Beginning of verse 6, how is de being used?
Oh, that's a. Transitional? Maybe?
Yes, I think so. I think so. Very nice. Okay, one more thing. Look at in verse 6, apeluen. What tense is that? Very.
Aorist tense?
It looked like an aorist tense to me. Okay, apaluo. Apaluin. Actually, I don't think it is an aorist tense.
Like the present.
I was thinking it was aorist too, but it really isn't an aorist.
Perfect?
It is an imperfect, isn't it?
Present.
No, it's imperfect. Because it's from apaluo. So we have an augment between the prepositional prefix and the stem. And we have secondary endings. Now it looks a little bit like a second aorist, but we have not had stem change.
Right.
So we would expect a sigma temporal infix if it were aorist. So we have an imperfect. What kind of imperfect would it be? Remember how we translated that. And according to the feast, he released to them one prisoner whom they asked.
Customary?
Customary. Very nice. Would anybody disagree with that?
No.
Very wise. See? You'd do well on the final, wouldn't you?
Feeling all right about it at this point.
Would it be okay then using sort of that idea then to say like it was customary around the feast?
Some translations do that.
Exactly. Yeah. It was custom. It was customary at the feast time. You know.
Yeah, but Julie.
Yeah. So when you're doing this, you know, you gotta. This is one of those moments where you have to relax, right? You know, relax your shoulders. Take your time, and you know, just look at the different options. Don't jump to conclusions too quickly. You know, you have the list in front of you. Read through the whole list and see which one fits best. I was trying to teach my son how to take multiple choice tests. He's in 7th grade, you know. And, you know, he picked an answer on one question that he got wrong. That wasn't a bad answer, but it wasn't the best answer. Because it says pick the best answer, like, you know, multiple choice. And, you know, I was telling him, well, you gotta, you know, don't pick the first answer that seems right to you. You have to read the whole list. Then that's what the best answer is. And usually in multiple choice, you know, you can take half of the options and cross them off because you know they're wrong. So there are 4 options. You can cross off 2 of them really easy. So now you're up from 25% chance of getting it right to a 50% chance of getting it right, even if you just guess from that point. All right? But try to think of what the best answer is. So use the process of elimination. Look at the whole, you know, list. Understand the context. Look at how you translate it. How did you translate it? See? I could tell by the context that was going to be a customary something, right? And just by looking at the list, there isn't a customary aorist. So if I think that's an aorist, now I'm questioning myself somewhere and begin to question, go, oh, that isn't an aorist. That's an imperfect, isn't it? See? So, you know, if you relax and take your time, you know, you should be able to do okay. Remembering that there's not always just one possible right answer, is there? And you may on the test, you know, you may want to say, okay, this is a, you know, customary imperfect. You may even want to, you know, jot down a little very short defense of that, you know, if you can think of one, you know. Wouldn't necessarily have to. I mean, you think it's obvious and you just nail it, you could just put that.
You must have put it's obvious I nailed it.
You could do that.
Just obvious.
All right. Cyrus, let's see you nail something.
Okay. And going up, the crowd began to ask, just as, or this is kind of awkward. So basically, the crowd began to ask, just as he did in the past, to do to them again.
Okay, now, this is a good one. We'll have you translate a little bit more, but what use of kai do you think you have here?
The first one?
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with the initial one to be connected.
Okay, very nice. Now, what tense do you think employé is in?
I would say
Careful.
past.
Because that part of it looks a lot like the final two, doesn't it?
So past, see, that's kind of like a multiple choice. I'm going with past tense.
Don't infer from what I'm saying tonight that it's this text that's going to be on the final. By the way, because I'm not trying to infer that. What I'm trying to infer is that these types of things is exactly what the final is going to be.
Are you gonna just keep it all out of one chapter, or are you gonna take pieces out of different chapters, do you think?
Probably out of different chapters. Yeah, probably.
It looks like a third singular present indicative, that's what it looks like.
Well, I don't think it looks like that, actually, to be honest with you. What's it from? Huh? Poieo. So what do we have? Let's break it down. Break it down, dog.
Looks like there's a change. Looks like there's a stem change.
There is
There is not a stem change. Poieo.
He's fired up about that.
Augment,
Oh, that's,
Yeah.
imperfect.
Are you getting out?
that's what I
I'm
heard.
getting it. Yeah, you follow me, please.
This
This is one of those rare occasions where I get it. Okay, we're starting with Poieo. I have Poi A. Okay, what happens? What's the stem here? There's the stem.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, there's the contract vowel. Here's the ending. Okay, what do I have? The stem. So I do not have stem change. Can the camera get the board?
You get this action?
Okay, I do not have stem change. What do I have here? I have an ending, right? What in the world happened to
Lengthen.
my, what happened to my contract vowel? Don't say it lengthened. Oh, don't say it lengthened. It contracted, right? So we're contracting. So, plus what? Equals A. That's what we're probably looking at there, right? Your contract chart?
Yeah, so there'd be.
So don't be bringing your English Bible, bring your beginning grammar. So you can look at your contract chart.
Got them both, all over the place. What's right here?
All right, so here we have contraction, and what do we have here? Augment. Okay, so there's only one thing it can possibly be if I have contraction and augment. Imperfect. It's an imperfect, that's right. It is an imperfect. All right, good. Now, what's the next question you think we should ask about that?
What kind of imperfect?
Exactly. What kind of imperfect do you think that is?
I'm gonna go with customary.
It's obvious. You nailed it. Bam. So now you see the meaning, right? And the crowd, after rising up, began to ask, just as he customarily did. And I'm not going to finish because I'm going to ask you the case and use of autois.
Okay. Case is dative.
Of? Dative of?
Oh, that's next. Right off to that, I want to say direct object. But I'm not done looking at my list.
No, you're not done looking at the list.
See that?
You are not done looking at the list. You are still not done.
Oh. Let me look up page 69 reference.
Now here, this is used intransitively. This word to do is used intransitively here. So we're not going to have a direct object, indirect object situation.
You say it's not indirect?
You probably could make an argument that you have an understood direct object, just as he did something for them, to them, but I don't think that's the best way to look at this. I think there's clearly a use of the dative that nails it, and I just gave you the hint by my translation.
What did you say? I missed the clue.
Oh. Well, did you read all the datives there? I mean,
Advantage.
yeah. All right, then there you go. Dative, don't you see it now? See dative of advantage. He did it for them.
Yeah.
All right. Man, you almost made me mess up my cheat sheet here. All right. Now we have a participle, and the crowd, after coming up, began, and here we have began to ask, what kind of participle do you think that would be? First of all, what's the tense of the participle? What's it from?
Anybody know?
Very nice. So its tense is aorist. Very nice. Very nice. So what's the use of the participle then? What kind of participle are we looking at? Is it adjectival or adverbial to begin with? Could be either because it doesn't have an article, but which one is it?
Adverbial?
Yeah. Very nice. Good guess.
Oh, well, it seems good.
All right, it's adverbial. What kind of adverbial?
I want to, my first inclination, which is not always correct, temporal. Temporal?
I think that would work.
It's clear, you nailed it.
But you probably could make an argument that that's attendant circumstance at that point, because you could translate that. The crowd went up and began to ask.
After they went up.
Or after they went up. But the temporal seems almost so obvious in the context, doesn't it?
Hate to use the obvious one when you're doing hermeneutics.
Yeah, that's just bad. So,
Isn't there a special one you use with infinitives?
well, no, that's my second question, though. We have erxata itesthai. Now, I know you know that erxata is an aorist, right? Indicative, right? Is that right, Cyrus? What is itesthai? What's it from? Iteo. So there's a big clue here. What's happening? Iteo. See, whenever you have a contract verb, right? You know, whenever you have a contract verb, first thing you're going to look for is what did the contract vowel do? You know that, don't you, Colby? What did the contract vowel do? Did it lengthen or did it contract? Because that's going to give you huge clues to the parsing. So what did it do here?
Contracted.
It contracted. So I'm in the present system, aren't I?
Yeah, it's an imperfect infinitive.
We need TiVo so we can back up.
Am I going to record you getting up and beating him?
No, we're going to make you turn the tape off before we do that. That's a temporal use of. After turning the tape off, he beat the student to a bloody pulp.
I'm thinking middle passive, I'm sorry.
Right.
That's one.
What's the tense? But it's not middle passive, it's either middle or passive.
That's
So it's a
true.
middle opponent,
Mhm.
but what tense is it?
Present.
Thank you. Okay, so it's a present middle opponent, what?
Infinitive.
Infinitive. What's the use of the infinitive here?
This feels like fun.
Okay, without looking at the book now, forget category names or whatever, just tell me what the infinitive does here.
Like, what they're doing?
No. What does the infinitive do grammatically in this sentence? Okay, and after going up, the crowd began to ask, just as he customarily did for them.
This describes what the crowd is doing?
Well, yeah, I mean, the crowd, it tells you what the crowd is doing, but grammatically, not content-wise. Grammatically, what's the infinitive doing here? Look at the text.
I'm moving with I don't know.
That's my favorite answer because it's the one I get from my son all the time.
Completing the idea of the beginning of something.
Okay,
To begin.
so it's completing the idea of the verb,
Yeah.
right?
It has to-
It's working together with the verb. You know, like I am able to, I ought to,
I see.
I am about
They began
to, they began to. So, you everybody see that? The infinitive here is completing the idea of the verb. Now we gotta do is put a name on it, and for that we refer to the book, and we find out it's what? Bingo. Very nice. All right. It's important to have a name for it because that's how we communicate, right? But it's more important that you understand what's happening, particularly because you're probably not going to say to your youth group, "This is a complementary infinitive," right? But if you understand that the infinitive is completing the verb, then you understand what's going on. The name is important just for communicating to other Greek scholars, you and me. But you know, to understand the concept is really what we're after here. All right. Can you continue on now with verse 9?
Seriously?
Oh yeah.
Then Pilate answered to them, saying, are you wanting me to release the King of the Jews to you?
I like that translation. Very nice. All right. So de, how do you think de is used here? Now de can be used two ways, right? As just a connective sort of thing, or as a contrast sort of thing. You think it's used with contrast here?
Yes.
You do? What's it contrasting?
Or up the crowd. Because the crowd is, well, I guess I can't assume the crowd's saying this for Barabbas' sake.
Well, if the crowd asked him to do what he customarily does, and Pilate said no, then there could be a contrast. But
Yeah.
Pilate said no.
So it's just,
But here it's just continuing, right?
if he said it later on, when they were asking for Barabbas, then he said, do you want the Jew? Do you want the King of the Jews? Then asked, well,
Like
All right.
verse 11.
yeah.
All right.
For
Yeah, that's okay. That would be contrasting.
That's
But
what I was, but yeah, we can't infer that yet.
in other words, you wouldn't want to translate that but. You'd want to translate it and. In other words. All right. Legon is a participle. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay.
It's
What?
redundant.
What? Oh. Obvious. You nailed it. All right. That's very nice. Wouldn't you agree with me that autois is in the dative?
Mm-hmm.
And would you agree with me that the use of the dative is probably indirect object,
Yes.
with the direct object implied, or even the direct object being the quote itself, right? He answered that to them, right? Okay. Let's see. Are you wanting I should, or I might, to you, the King of the Jews, release? I might release to you the King of the Jews. That's kind of idiomatic there, isn't it? How would you parse apolluso, by the way?
I would call it subjunctive
Right on.
first.
What tense?
Present.
Present?
Wait, no, so. Aries.
All right. All right, now just for practice, so everybody can hear it, give me a full parsing of that, you know, in order and everything.
What order do you want? I've heard a lot of different orders in my time.
Well, tense, voice, mood, person, number, vocabulary, and the meaning of
Tense,
vocabulary.
voice, mood. Tense, aorist, active, subjunctive. That was the first three. What were the next three? Person, number.
Remember how we used to do?
Like I said, heard a lot of orders in it. Let's go with first person singular. From, what was I doing again? What's going on? From Apalua, meaning release, I release.
Nice. Kind of makes you wonder if you still want to be in ministry, doesn't it?
Like I said downstairs, I can't wait for my Greek class to be over so I don't have to look at Greek ever again.
I only know that that's not true, or else I would get you in your sleep. Find out where you live and get you in your sleep.
Oh, you got that.
I've been to your house.
That's the third most dangerous job is being a Greek student. A taxi driver, police officer, and something else.
Crab fishing it.
Yeah, crab fishing. And then Greek student.
Greek student. Especially if the professor's been to your house. I know you must be joking because you know I've been to your house. It's less dangerous to be a drug dealer?
Yeah.
You might slip and let your true feelings show, and then you never know what's going to happen. Ready to rock and roll, Mark?
Me?
Can we say rock and roll? Is that okay?
As long as
As long as you don't listen to it.
Depends on your personal convictions, just don't place yours on.
Just Christian rock and roll, because it's we're talking about
Let's
the
not
Bible.
oxymoron.
Verse 10.
Okay. For he knew that through envy, as we leave that stage, they had delivered him over. That the chief priest had delivered him over. Or probably should say because of envy.
Thank you. All right. You read my mind. All right. Gar. What kind of use of gar do you think you have? I've been waiting for this verse because of that. This is so awesome. Gar.
It's a pirate issues. It is logical.
Well, it's under the logical functions. Yes, you're
Yeah,
right.
it's in the
You're right.
logical section,
That's right.
so there's a sub thing of it.
That's
And so
right.
It's going to be, correlative.
No, the correlative ones are the double ones. Remember?
it's the men.
Kai, mende.
Oh, those are the two.
Co.
Okay.
Remember co, you know, like
Oh,
co-pilot
okay.
or whatever.
Oh, this is nice.
4 years.
Okay, explanatory.
Yeah, this is not looking like the final.
What?
This is not looking like the final.
It's not.
Having somebody
That's really cool. If you keep that open, I have.
Oh,
a
this
cheat
is
sheet.
a
That's
strand
really
of
cool.
4 Greek students is not easily broken.
Yes, it is. It is an explanatory conjunction. All right. Now would you parse egenosken?
I was looking at that one, and
What's it from?
it's from UNESCO.
So what do we have here? Okay, we have an augment. And what's the ending?
It's a third singular ending.
That's right.
So I'm going to go with third singular aorist active indicative. Is it imperfect?
Is that your final answer?
Apparently not. Third singular imperfect active.
It is, because the aorist has a stem change. It's a root aorist. It would be egnon. right?
Is that the only way you would have known that?
Well, no, there's no sigma. There's no stem change, there's no sigma. If there's not a stem change, there has to be a sigma for it to be an
Sigma's
aorist.
part of the,
Unless it's a kappa first aorist, right?
right.
But there, if unless it's a second aorist, and then you have stem change, which we don't do,
Right.
you've got to have a temporal infix for the aorist.
And the sigma
Usually a
that's there
sigma.
is part of the word, it's part of the.
And that's a little bit confusing because the sigma that's there is part of the word.
Yeah.
So you can see that sigma and think aorist, but that's part of the stem, right?
Right.
So, this is very regular and typical rules for determining whether it's an imperfect or an aorist. Even if the aorist were a first aorist, this couldn't be aorist because I don't have a temporal infix. So with an aorist, I'm either going to have a temporal infix, usually a sigma, sometimes a kappa, and a kappa first aorist, or stem change.
Okay.
And then if I have stem change, it would be a second aorist.
And then no augment, but you have the connecting valve.
Then you have augment. No, that's only in a contract verb.
Like the second aorist goes as the augment.
Well, you said connecting value. You might be using the term. I think I see what you're saying. That you just have your secondary endings, right? Like on SS, same as
Yeah.
imperfect, right?
Yeah.
So if you can have imperfect looking endings on a second aorist, but you've had stem change.
Okay. And that's the only way you can know the stem change, isn't it?
Mhm. So that's why you have to know what the vocabulary form is, which we know, gnosko. We
Right.
know gnosko. And so we're asking ourselves the question, is there stem change or is there a temporal infix? In this case, there is neither. And when there's neither,
Where did the,
it can't be aorist.
I'm going to show my ignorance. Where did the iota in there come from? Because the epsilon's already augmenting it, right?
That's part of the stem, gnosko.
Oh, I was thinking it just went gamma nu. The iota's in
Well, the real stem is gamma nu, and that's what shows up in the aorist. There's a root aorist. But that iota, is added in the present system because of the derivative nature of the tense. See, it's a little bit like balo, which has two lambdas in the present, but when you get to the aorist, ebalon, it only has one lambda. Well, the real stem of balo is just with one lambda. But when you get to the present tense, it adds a lambda. There's addition of letters sometimes a consonant doubling, sometimes an iota adding in, because of the derivative nature of the tense. See what I mean? So that's what's happened with gnosko. So in one sense, the real root of it is just gamma nu. Now that's why in English to kno is spelled in that way. It's K-N, not K-I-N. So there you go. There's a little linguistics, actually. All right, so what would be the next question then?
Whatever you want it to be.
All right then, what type of imperfect is it?
What type of imperfect?
This is a great sentence for asking
You don't have to help me
questions.
out anymore,
I'm not supposed to.
You're not supposed to help.
It says finding human nature. We've got the all answer.
Let's see. I'm just going to have to go aggressive.
It could be he began to know.
We started to realize or something, that's what I'm thinking.
It
when
could
I say
be.
that.
Probably knew all along.
Yeah, that's true from the context.
Because the pilot knew what was going on.
Yeah.
There's been talk.
Yeah, it's probably progressive.
It's just descriptive.
Yeah, descriptive. But you'd almost expect an aorist. He knew.
Yeah.
But the idea is, he was knowing that. So, in other words, the idea here is that in the whole process, he was hip to their jive, right?
But he was aware.
He was in a state of awareness of their, that's the kind of
Yeah,
idea.
I see that.
All right, now hati. There's a conjunction for you.
Yes.
Normally subordinating or coordinating conjunction.
That would be a subordinating.
Very nice. How's it being used here?
Well, it's starting a dependent clause that is, really the whole clause is like a direct object.
Okay, good. Now, hold that thought. It's starting a dependent clause that really is working as a direct object, all right? So it's very nice. He's understanding how it's operating. So you're understanding what's happening here, right?
There's a word for it.
And now we got to find the word for it. But you got the most important thing, right? So on our cheat sheet, we look under conjunctions. We have logical functions, adverbial functions, and we have substantival functions. Which one do you think it's going to fall under?
Substantive.
It's operating as a substantive, right? So which one do you think it is?
Substantive.
Yeah, but which one of those subcategories of substantive?
Page 289.
Oh, okay. It would be the content,
Why?
because he's not really exegetical as additional explanation.
Okay, very good. And so we've ruled out that one, so it must be that one. But give me a positive reason why it's that one.
Well, I was giving the content of what he knew.
Bingo. Obvious. He nails it. All right. Awesome. Everybody see that?
Yeah.
I could envision. This would be kind of a cool way to do the final.
Let's just say this is.
I could give you a verse, or a group of verses, and say, give me a grammatical explanation of every word in the verse.
You really think that'd be cool?
Give me the fullest grammatical explanation of each word in the verse that you're capable of giving.
I think it sounds like cool, but it's actually cruel.
So if it's a noun, you're giving me gender, number,
Is that a play
case,
on words?
and case usage.
What is it?
If it's a verb, you're parsing it. You're giving me the use of the tense. You're giving me the use of the voice, the use of the mood. It's a participle. All of those things. Wow. Every word. If it's a conjunction, you're giving me the use of the conjunction.
We could do that as long as it's one word.
If it's a preposition, it's just, that would be hot, wouldn't it? Wouldn't that be cool?
Let's just do it for one verse.
Well, that wouldn't be very
He's
exciting.
probably gonna do it for 20.
You gotta get on a roll here.
Let's just do the book of Mark.
I have rolled.
I've been rolled.
Okay, we're not done. Let's see. 4, he was knowing that
I gotta keep going.
on account of envy. How would you parse paradedokeson?
Well, very saw it, so it's third plural, pluperfect, active negative.
Okay, nice. What's it from?
Paradidomi.
Very good. Now, it's from didomi, paradidomi, but we can,
Right.
set the para aside for a second. Set para aside. That's kind of funny. Didomi, right?
Bilingual fun. That's incredible. You are.
Woo! Didomi, right? What are our rules for determining the tense of didomi or me verbs in general?
The rule for tense of verbs.
For the tense of me verbs, let's just remind ourselves of that because that's an important rule to know.
Yeah.
Having to do with reduplication, remember?
Oh, that's right. They reduplicate within a iota.
Well, sometimes. If you have a iota reduplication, if you have an iota reduplication, what system are you working in?
Present.
Present system. So if we had ditto here, we would either have a present or an imperfect. We don't have that though, right?
Right.
All right. If we have reduplication with an epsilon, which is what we have here, what system are we working in? Tense-wise. Well, no, that's not tense. That's a mood. Doesn't matter. That doesn't matter indicative or not.
Perfect is the perfect
Huh?
tense. Perfect tense.
Say it again.
Perfect?
Perfect. That's right. And pluperfect is in the perfect system, right?
Right.
In other words, the pluperfect forms off the perfect principal
Yeah.
part,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
So a perfect or pluperfect in the me verbs is going to have an epsilon reduplication. So ditto me becomes dead.
Okay.
Tife me becomes tef. Right? For example. Now, if you have no reduplication, what are we looking at?
On a me verb?
Like ditto me. So if you just had do, for example. What
It wouldn't
system?
be imperfect,
What
yeah.
tense? Can't be perfect because it doesn't have epsilon reduplication. Can't be in the present system because it doesn't have iota reduplication.
Oh.
So it must be in the
Error.
aorist system. Aorist, including the future, because future is aoristic in its kind of action, right? So no reduplication on a me verb would be aorist or future, right? Remember that? Still want to be in ministry? Well, if it were easy, everybody could do it.
So are you saying that not everybody should be this?
Yep.
So,
Not everybody who wants to be in ministry should be in ministry.
Amen.
Actually, not everybody should be leaders of ministers, because everybody in the church should be the ministers.
Yeah, well, it depends on how you define ministry. But, you know, if you're going to define it, if you're going to go ahead and try to define it biblically, okay then.
it comes with the Sunday you preach that.
All right, Mark, Smarty Pants, read verse 11 then.
So, but the chief priests, yeah, is that one in there? Oh, yeah, okay.
And you could do that contrastive there probably, couldn't you? But the chief priests,
Yes, we could, absolutely. But the chief priests stirred up the crowd in order that they would basically they would prefer.
wait a minute, hold your horses, be careful. Okay, you're looking at henna in order that, right?
Yeah,
So what am I going to look for after henna?
subjunctive,
Excellent. Okay, find me the subjunctive.
apaluse.
Okay, now parse it. We know it's aorist, don't we? It doesn't have an augment. Why?
Because they dropped their arguments and how did they make it?
That's right, because it's subjunctive. Very good. So it doesn't have an augment. How do I know it's aorist?
Because of these sigma.
Sigma, temporal infix. There you go. So I have an aorist, active, subjunctive. Now give me the rest.
That would be second singular.
Close.
Third singular.
Third singular. Okay, now let's back up. And the chief priests, singular or plural?
Plural.
Plural. So, can that be the subject of that? No. All right, so the chief priest stirred up the crowd in order that, what?
It's basically rather to release Barabbas to them.
Okay, just translate apaluse for me.
So you're subjunctive. But they might. Why am I saying infinitive? Okay, but they might
They?
release.
No.
Or that he might release. Yeah.
There you go, okay, now, that he might
He
release.
would rather release.
Stirred up the crowd in order that he might release rather Barabbas
Right.
to them.
To them.
Or
Okay.
he might release to them Barabbas instead, is better
Okay,
English.
yeah.
Right? All right then. So we've got a contrasting use of de here. Henna, conjunction. All right? Now, subordinating conjunction. So what kind of sentence do I have? Complex, compound, or simple?
Complex.
I have a complex. Why? Because I have a subordinate clause. Okay, so henna is introducing a subordinate clause. But what use of henna is it? In order that. Henna is typically what?
Explanatory?
No?
I'm not guessing.
301.
Oh, purpose. Result.
It's either purpose or result normally, isn't it? So what is it here?
Be the result.
There's some semantic.
Well, no, actually, it could be either kind of.
It's probably both. because they did it for that purpose and it had its result. So a lot of times, purpose and result were both together. We saw that before in our book, right? So they stirred up the crowd for the purpose of, and with the result that, well, however,
Actually, it probably would be more purpose,
more,
wouldn't it?
yeah, I mean, that
It
ended
hasn't
up,
happened
that
yet.
ended up being the result,
Right.
right? But
Yeah.
you're right, it hasn't happened yet, so it's probably more purpose. All right, that's good. That's good, I like it. All right, I must say that there is a marked improvement in y'all doing this stuff tonight over the last couple of nights. Do you feel it? Could you feel the love?
Yeah.
I do.
You know,
Studied.
you had me a little worried a couple weeks ago. We talked about that, didn't we? But I'm not so worried now because you're getting it, right? So isn't that, you know, that's pretty awesome. When it comes to the text, now, you know, drawing out the meaning of the text, that's another thing. That's the next class.